It's January 8, Ukraine Media Center starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Shaprenko, and now we will be talking about the situation in the power grid of Ukraine. And joining us in the studio is Oleksandr Kharchenko, the director of the Energy Reserve Center. Good morning, Mr. Oleksandr. Good morning. So, first of all, I would like to ask you, how stable is the situation in the power grid for the time being? We all feel that the situation is, well, it looks pretty good. There have been no massive strikes lately. The weather seems to favor us. The armed forces of Ukraine are doing a great job defending our critical infrastructure. Again, weather and the absence of the massive strikes allows our energy technicians to fulfill their job. Is the situation really like this? Well, you've almost covered all of it. But talking seriously, the situation is stable, it's under control, but it's not unchangeable. First of all, thanks to the weather conditions and thanks to the developed algorithms of the quick reaction after the attacks, we've survived 5 waves of attacks within the last 2 months, and those 5 waves gave Muscovites nothing. People have lights. There are certain nuances related to technical issues of local nature, so there are no restrictions all over Ukraine. Quite an active work is underway to renew the aerial networks, or I would say not renew, but reinforce them. The quite active work is underway in terms of physical protection construction. The last attacks were aimed at thermal generation. It's really bad because even at temperature like this, if heat supply goes off, you'll find out in a couple of hours that it's impossible to stay in a concrete building without heating. So there's a lot of efforts focused in this area. And again, we were talking about it a lot of times, but there is no magic sticks. Whatever you do, it takes time. So all of the necessary efforts are being taken to defend us against future attacks, to reinforce the power grid, and to minimize the consequences of those attacks that we definitely expect to see. We have no doubts there will be further attacks. The question is only when are they going to happen, what will be their nature, and what will they be focused on. There's a lot of hypotheses about that, and a lot of efforts are focused on minimizing the consequences of future attacks. Well, reinforcement of the power grid depends directly on the support of the foreign partners. How actively are they helping us to acquire the necessary materials, machinery, and what is the plan for the year 2025? For example, recently we were visited by the delegation from Iceland, who reiterated their stance, who reconfirmed their intention to continue helping us. So what is the amount of foreign aid that we are expecting to get this year? Well, look, with all due respect to the foreign partners, the fact of presence of electricity in a power grid is not their merit. If we take the balance and we calculate the efforts of Ukrainian power technicians and the foreign aid, I would say 80% is Ukrainian efforts and 20% is the support that we've got from the partners. We see it quite clearly. It's not only my personal opinion. I take part in a lot of different discussions, including ones with the foreign partners, with the representatives of different governments and organizations. And everybody sees that the scheme that we were trying to develop during the first periods, initial periods, like state over here, another state on our end, and we were trying to figure out how can they help to provide equipment or do something else. So now we've realized that such a scheme is not efficient, and today we have a consensus that this setup should be changed, because the bureaucracy versus bureaucracy yields very slow pace. And if we evaluate the pace of the support provided after the Ukrainian party formulated their request until the provision of the equipment, it might have taken more than a year, and there were many situations when the help that was provided, or the aid that was provided, was used for other purposes than it was requested for, adapting it to the necessities of the moment, so to say. So it's getting more and more clear that the key tool for restoring Ukrainian power grid is allow the private capital, foreign private capital, to build new generating capacities. Ukraine has a lot of advantages to do so, a lot of basic conditions that make it attractive, but there is a huge minus called rockets and drones from Moscow. And there is an intense discussion around it. How can we set up the mechanism that would allow to protect the private investors against military and political risks? Because the tools are there, but they were not intended to such a mass use as they are required in Ukraine. I'm seeing the partners focusing their efforts in this area, their brain efforts, so to say, to set up such a tool which would be both quick and efficient, because there are tools that are there, but they are intended to be used within 1 year. We need a tool that would be operable within, say, 3 months. If it happens, it would be the key element for restoration of our power grid, because the advent of foreign investors, of those who are ready to risk, against insurance, but to construct the new generating capacities, those that we need the soonest possible. And even when there is a foreign financial aid provided to an efficient government company, I'm not going to call their names, but they come in such small numbers that people who know what I'm talking about will understand. But comparing to private businesses, the process is delayed for 1.5 years. Even with the most efficient government-controlled companies on our end, with focused aid from the foreign partners. So it all takes time. The regular procurement procedure, the government company announces a bid that lasts half a year, then it's summarized. By the time it's summarized, we find out that that equipment is already bought by someone else, and the government company launches yet another bid, another half a year, then 2 weeks to sign a contract, and in a couple of months the equipment is being shipped. So it's a huge difference, and without access of the private capital, without this mechanism, our restoration is going to take years and years. Well, we have the similar story with humanitarian corridor. It's a bilateral advantage. It's not only advantage for us to ship the grain, but also for other countries to get that grain. And the same is here with the power grid. Basically, under the conditions of constant and sensible strikes, are you sure that the private investors are ready to risk, are ready to enter Ukraine, even against insurance? I know about 1.5 gigawatts of energy who are ready to enter Ukraine and start constructing. Yeah, they also applied for insurance. The real American and European investors who are ready to invest in the Ukrainian power grid even during the war. But to make it happen, to really start implementing their projects, they need to get their insurance. They're going to walk this path. For some of them, it's going to take 9 months. For some, maybe a year, because it's a lengthy process. If this process is expedited, everything's going to happen sooner. Well, now that we're talking about the foreign markets, let's talk about Moldova, about Transnistria, which is left without electricity. Our enemy keeps accusing Ukraine of this, but what is the situation in reality? How can we solve that energy crisis that is happening there? Well, first of all, neither Transnistria nor Moldova have no problems with getting all the electricity and all of the gas they need. There are no technical and physical problems about it. They can get it today by lunchtime. The only problem that really exists is the fact that if Moldova is ready, if they're ready to pay a market price for energy resources and to get them in exchange, Transnistria basically under command of Moscow operators refuses this help. But technically, today, within a couple of hours, the gas could be supplied to Transnistria and all of the necessary electricity could be provided to them as well. Based on what they consume, for Ukraine, it's no problem at all to solve this problem. It's not problem at all for Romania. European Commission offers help. The Ukrainian government definitely doesn't refuse it. Well, there were a lot of statements made like we're ready. Just please understand that the word help or aid doesn't necessarily mean free provision of energy resources. If you want to get something, you have to be ready to pay for it. If you need energy resources, please buy them. They are available, but please buy, because Ukraine pays for everything. When we mine our gas, when we buy gas from Europe, if we need it, we pay for it, we invest in it. The government invests, private investors invest. The coal is being spent, uranium is being spent, electricity is being generated, the money is being invested in restoration, in new construction. You have to pay for everything. There are market mechanisms. So both gas and electricity are available for Moldova 100%. Gas and electricity is available for Transnistria 100%. The only thing they have to do is to pay. Okay, so then let's get back to Ukraine, to the heating season. As you've mentioned, there might be a big problem after intense strikes on the thermal generation. What does Ukraine need to make sure that the second half of the winter passes in a more or less calm and tranquil way with heat and electricity? Well, the most recent attacks were focused on thermal power plants, those that supply heat, not electricity. So they generate a little bit of electricity, but that's called parasitic product. So it's like auxiliary part of it. So their main focus is heat supply. Unfortunately, those attacks happened to be quite successful. A couple of facilities were severely damaged. Some of them were replaced quite promptly. We have to give their due to the Cabinet of Ministers, to the local authorities. On both levels, there was significant preparation that yielded positive results. We have to give our government their due. This thing was really prepared for. But again, we expect the temperature to go lower in the end of January, maybe beginning of February, and by then the thermal generation plants will become the targets of the Moscovian attacks. And there are no other tools in place here other than air defense. Those are big stationary facilities that cannot be covered with some shields or anything. So it's all about electronic countermeasures and air defense measures. Every single effort is being taken there to protect it, everything that is possible to build there, but it cannot protect the facility against the rocket strike. It's a huge facility, like 10 meters high, 100 meters wide. You cannot protect it with a shield, with a sarcophagus. Well, there is a threat, definitely, but the preparation is underway to such potential strikes. There are scenarios already developed what can be done. The big cities have module boiler rooms that can be quickly connected to the heat supply grid to reserve that heat supply. So there is a threat. We live with it. We understand that it can happen. But again, a lot of efforts are being taken to mitigate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Oleksandr. Dear colleagues, do we have any questions on the floor? Well, now that we don't, let me just thank you and remind our listeners and spectators that we were talking about the situation in the power grid of Ukraine, and Ukraine Media Center will continue at 12 o'clock. We will have a discussion about how to bring Ukrainian Marines back home.